Now, we are continuing to follow the very latest developments in two fatal attacks that took place on New Year's Day. The first that we're going to talk about is a Tesla Cybertruck explosion in front of the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas. It injured several people and killed the driver. The second was an ISIS-linked domestic terror attack in New Orleans that took the lives of 14 victims. The vehicles used in both incidents were rented using the same app, and each involved U.S.-born military servicemen who served in Afghanistan around the same time. Now, despite the parallels of these attacks, FBI officials say at this point there is no definitive link. Republican House Homeland Security Committee Chairman Mark Green was asked about this on CBS Mornings Today. Here's what he had to say about it.
These gentlemen, both in Vegas and in New Orleans, were in the military, assigned to Fort Bragg at the same time, but two separate units. We also know they deployed to Afghanistan at about the same time, so they were at the same base in Afghanistan. I think the real key now is for military Central Investigation Division, CID, to dig into that, see if they were associated while they were in the military, and see if there are other folks that might have been radicalized about the same time.
Okay, so let's bring in CBS News Crime and Public Safety Unit Senior Coordinating Producer Anna Schecter with more on the very latest developments. Anna, nice to see you. I want to hear your response to what we just heard from House Homeland Security Chairman Mark Green. What'd you make of those comments?
Well, listen, the military is key in investigating whether there was any crossover between these two men. But at this point, we don't really have that. So, yes, it's a strange coincidence that they were in Afghanistan around the same time, but they were doing totally separate jobs. So my response is, well, one of them, Jabbar, who carried out the attack in New Orleans, was an IT specialist, a human resource specialist. That is very, very different from the Las Vegas person who appeared to have committed suicide and blown up the Tesla, exploded the Tesla. This was a decorated Green Beret with serious combat experience and had done several tours, was stationed in Germany, was in the midst of a decorated career in the military. So you have kind of different profiles. Now, they did overlap in North Carolina. You know, our teams, we were all pouring through the available records on both men over the last couple of days, and we noticed the North Carolina connection. We noticed the Afghanistan connection. We have a team, a confirmed team, trying to find anyone who served with these men, but none of them have suggested that there was any overlap. What the military is doing is they want to check, and the FBI as well, to see if there was a third person, like a nexus point between these two. At this point, we have absolutely no evidence of that. It seemed to me like the congressman was kind of going off of where we were at yesterday afternoon. Of course, we don't want to rule anything out, but in terms of the Las Vegas person, we're really looking at mental health. What about grievances against the military? It didn't appear that he had grievances against Trump or Elon Musk. I think about the timing. We're about to be heading into an inauguration of Trump. Elon Musk, who's the owner of Tesla, has a big role there. So, initially we were looking at that and saying, does the timing and the location of this explosion, would that mark some kind of an expression of a grievance against the administration? But we really don't have any of that. So a lot of this is speculation. The congressman was correct in talking about the military investigation right now that is digging through both of their files. They've actually shared with us, that both of them had earned multiple awards, particularly the Green Beret, who had done several tours of duty. So they've shared that. That's what they've found. Our reporting doesn't indicate that they found anything else. But, of course, we are looking in the Las Vegas case. Did he have any grievances about his situation in life? Was it his personal life, grievances against the military? What about mental health brought on by a traumatic brain injury? That's a line of questioning investigators are looking at, because they're looking at him versus other profiles, people who have started to act erratically or violently, seemingly out of the blue and out of character. Liz?
Yeah, I want to talk about that app Turo. This was the app both drivers used to rent their vehicles. You described it yesterday. I thought it was very well done. It's a little bit like Airbnb, but for cars. What is the company Turo? What are they saying about this?
Well, overnight we got a statement that these two men would have been cleared to fly on an airline. They wouldn't have been caught by like big rental business, as they refer to, a regular rental car like a Hertz or a national rental company, or law enforcement. This is actually and this is news that we've just gotten in thanks to our own Laura Geller, who got an updated statement from Turo saying, despite this strong track record and as an immediate next step while we wait for law enforcement to conclude their investigations, we're consulting with national security and counterterrorism experts to learn more about how we can get even better and play our part in helping prevent anything like this from happening. The company said, thinking about how egregiously the two individuals who perpetrated these heinous crimes abused our platform, I'm outraged. This is coming from the CEO. So they're working around the clock, they say, to figure out how our platform could be misused by perpetrators of such atrocities. So they're owning that they're in the spotlight right now. It is sort of an unusual nexus that an app like this would be used by two men with different profiles in different locations on New Year's Day, one to commit an act of violence that killed 14, that FBI, it's clearly an act of terrorism, they say, inspired by ISIS. The other man, it appears it was suicide, and it's unclear if he intended to hurt anyone else. 7 others were injured in that as a result of that explosion, but only he was killed in that explosion. Liz?
Yeah, still a lot of unanswered questions to all of this. But I know you're going to stay on top of it for us, Anna. Thank you so much.